Good evening. The Godrej Literature Live Poet Laureate Award celebrates the timeless power of poetry to move hearts, spark reflection, and bring us closer through the beauty of words. It honors a poet whose work captures the spirit of our times, transforming emotion into art and giving voice to both the intimate and the universal. This award celebrates the poet's gift for illuminating truth, awakening empathy, and reminding us of our shared humanity. To celebrate our Poet Laureate today, we would like to share a short film.
Maun sarovar chalkya, par saptani tuti, and then he goes on. Pani eva to vrelaya ke chare. So he's saying that to himself and to the world, the lakes of silence have now overflowing.
I came across Sitanshu's poetry in around 1972. At that point of time, there were 2-3 names like Sitanshu Yashaschandra. He was writing poetry that began the era of modernism in Gujarati literature.
Sitanshu was always an innovator and experimenter. His first poetry collection's name was Odysseus no Alesu. Typical of Sitanshu is that he is equally at ease in a Western literature and Indian literature, maybe Sanskrit.
When a lot of lyrical poetry was written in Gujarati, he started writing surreal poems. The use of language, the new motifs, images, new idiom of language, all that was a first time in Gujarati, post-modernism.
He has few poems which have become iconic because, the Lai, Jatayu, and all, very well known. Every boy and girl who study Gujarati in a Prathmik school in far off village in Kutch would say, "Ha, Jatayu Sitanshu Bhai."
It was indeed an utter privilege to be a student in the classroom where you have a poet and a very important poet of our times. Until then, largely English classrooms were beholden to a romantic worldview. And to bring in what is the significance of the modernist and in what way it related us immediately to the world around us. That is, I think, a very significant contribution of Professor Sitanshu Mehta.
He's a very good scholar, a brilliant playwright. Even in his plays, he's working out the same angry young man who can't stand mediocrity, who can't stand compromises, who can't stand selling off to self.
For us, lovers of genuine poetry, he had always been a poet laureate in our hearts for many years. So congratulations, Sitanshu Bhai. Gujarati literature is proud of you, Gujarati poetry is proud of you.
Heartfelt congratulations. It's the most exhilarating news I have really got, and I'm so happy for that.
20th century Gujaratis will remember as Sitanshu's century of poetry. So he is a legend in his lifetime as such. Congratulations to Sitanshu Bhai.
What are you going to do with one more award, Sitanshu? How are you going to dress up? Same shirt that you always wear, or are you buying a new one?
And now I'm going to read out the citation for our Poet Laureate today. In conferring the Lifetime Achievement Award at Literature Live, the Mumbai Litfest 2025, we honor a poet whose words have bridged time, widened the Gujarati imagination, and resonated across India's literary landscape. Sitanshu Yashaschandra's writing, steeped in Indian classicism, yet alert to modern anxieties, enlarges the possibilities of Gujarati literature and through it, our own. He reminds us that the poet's task is not only to echo what is, nor sing of what has been, but to dream of what might still be. His words endure as witness and companion, as mirror and lamp. He once said that when there is fire, the poet isn't meant to dig a well. He makes sense of the devastation, sharpening our awareness of the human condition to show compassion and protect the vulnerable, and warning us of the pyromaniacs among us. Sitanshu has never accepted the false boundary between the old and the new. His poetry inhabits that luminous space where tradition plays with experiment, the cadences of Sanskrit flow into modernist unease, and the ancient and contemporary mirror each other's light. His poetry carries inherited memory and the daring of surreal imagination, startling us into seeing the world anew. Like Odysseus, about whom he writes, Sitanshu is a voyager, and he becomes a bridge between the East and West, past and present, real and surreal. Over half a century, he has opened Gujarati verse to the world, and the world to Gujarati verse. His images range from the crunch of tanks in Vietnam to Narsingh Mehta's modernity, from Saraswati's fury at the closing of the Indian mind to the plea for nonviolence amid Balkan brutality. Ants swarm, epics cohabit with intimate sorrow, and Central American landscapes inspire him. His work shows how history's relentless march collides with fragile silences of private grief. For him, classicism is no fossil, but a living force attuned to our zeitgeist. His dreamscapes unsettle certainties, keeping us vigilant against complacency. Neither provincial nor parochial, Sitanshu makes Gujarat part of the vast world of humanity. Like Gandhi, he welcomes the winds of other cultures without being blown off his feet. As defenders of writers' autonomy, he challenged the state from the pulpit of the Gujarati Sahitya Parishad to preserve the independence of writers. A professor, scholar, translator, and dramatist, Sitanshu is above all a poet. His words are infused with Gujarati lilt, even as they give voice to the anguish of Pristina, the ruins of Mohenjo-daro, and the medieval cadences of Akhyan. He writes of Pralay and understands the anguish of Jatayu. His plays, from the absurdity of Eugene Ionesco's Margadarshan to Thomas Hardy's tale of a tragic deception in Vaisakhi Koyal, and Peter Schaeffer's mesmeric equine saga of repression and eroticism obsessions in Tokhar, squeeze the universe into a ball and make it Gujarati. Sitanshu's elegance lies in his modernity never being rootless, his classicism never static. His surrealism sharpens our perception, reminding us that literature, at its best, is both a mirror and a lamp, reflecting who we are and illuminating what we may yet become. For infusing imagination into reality, for being profoundly of his world and also beyond it, for making us realize the boundless possibilities of the poetic form, and most of all, for being the embodiment of a life of letters lived with deep insight and integrity, the Godrej Literature Live Poet Laureate Award is conferred to Sitanshu Yashaschandra for the 2025 edition of the festival. Written by Salil Tripathi.
Thank you so much for that, Tina. I'd now like to invite on stage Amy Fernandez, co-director of Literature Live, the Mumbai Litfest 2025, the managing director of Godrej Industries and chairman of Godrej Agrovet, Nadir Godrej, and one of India's most distinguished artists, Atul Dodiya, to escort to stage our Godrej Literature Live Poet Laureate for 2025, Mr. Sitanshu Yashaschandra, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Godrej, Amy, and Tina, for that. અને હવે આપણા ગોદરેજ લિટરેચર લાઈવ પોએટ લોરિએટ 2025 માનનીય શ્રી સિતાંશુ યશસ્ચંદ્ર આપણને થોડા શબ્દોથી સંબોધિત કરે એ મારી પ્રાર્થના છે.
इथे जे तरी होत आहे यार, मला असं वाटते की गुजराती कवी, गुजराती लेखक त्याला आभारचे 2 शब्द सांगायला कोणी सांगितला तो त्यांनी मराठीमध्ये बोलायचं आहे. પણ હું એ આશા રાખું કે જ્યારે કોઈ મરાઠી કવિને આ કોઈ સન્માન મળે અને આ મંચ ઉપર આવે તો એ મરાઠી કવિ ગુજરાતીમાં બોલે એવી પણ આપણી અપેક્ષા છે. એટલે કથા સરિત સાગર એવું આપણું મહાન પુસ્તક છે. જગતભરમાં એના અનુવાદોમાંથી નવલકથા વગેરે એમાંથી જ આવ્યું છે. તો સરિત સાગર, સાગર પણ છે ને સાગરમાં સરિતાઓ છે. મીઠા પાણીની છે, ખારા પાણીની છે, ગરમ પાણીની છે, ઠંડા પાણીની છે, બધી સરિતાઓ છે. અને આપણો ભારતીય લેખક એ જાણતો હતો. અને જ્યારે ખાસ કરીને લોકકથાઓ કહેવા માગતો હતો ત્યારે એ જાણતો હતો કે આ ભારત પાસે જે છે એ સરિત સાગર છે. તો જે થોડાક નામો આપણે ત્યાં અટક તરીકે વપરાય છે અને વળી પાછી એક આશ્વાસક નામ તરીકે પણ વપરાય છે. એવું આ નામ ગોદરેજ છે. એ ગુજરાતની તિજોરી છે. એટલે આપણે ચાહીએ કે પારસી લેખકો, જે આપણે મહાન નાટકકારો, લેખકો પારસીઓ તો કેવા, પ્રિન્ટિંગ પ્રેસ શરૂ કર્યો, ન્યૂઝપેપર શરૂ કર્યું, કેટલું બધું કર્યું. સોનેટ પહેલું પારસીએ લખ્યું. રાફેલ તારી પીછીનો એક એક બાલ, હસે કોઈ સુંદર પર્યાનું પીછ, એમ કરીને સોનેટ લખ્યું હતું રાફેલ ઉપર. તો આવો પારસી સમાજ પણ પાછો ગુજરાતીમાં આવે. મેં સાહેબની સાથે વાત કરી છે, આપણે બધા ભેગા મળીને કામ કરીએ. અને બીજી ભાષાઓમાંથી પણ ગુજરાતીમાં બીજી ભાષાઓમાં. એટલે અંગ્રેજીનું તો સ્વાગત છે. અંગ્રેજીનું શું, ચાઇનીઝનું પણ સ્વાગત કરી શકીએ આપણે આવતીકાલે. એમાં કંઈ વાંધો નથી. એ સત્તાની ભાષાઓ હોય તો આપણે ઉપયોગી પણ થાય. પણ જ્યાં સુધી આપણી ભાષાઓમાં અંદરોઅંદર કોઈ બીજી ભાષાની ખલેલ વિના, જ્યાં સુધી અંદરોઅંદર સરિત સાગર નહીં બને ત્યાં સુધી 21મી સદીનું ભારતીય સાહિત્ય બનવાની શક્યતા ઓછી છે. એટલે આપણે આજે એમ કહીએ કે આ આપણી બધી ભારતીય ભાષાઓનો પણ સંગમ અહીંયા અનિલભાઈએ આ જે મોટી કલ્પનાશીલતાથી કામ કર્યું છે અને આજે ઓર્ગેનિકલી આગળ વધે છે. હું કહું છું કે આ થોડું ટર્નિંગ પોઈન્ટ પણ છે. તો છેલ્લે એક વાત કહું કે આ લોરેલ એ છે ને તે પેલા એક જાતનો પાંદડાનો મુગટ બતાવતા હતા. તો મારી વિનંતી એ છે કે આ વખતે તમે જે વખતે મને લોરેલમાં મુગટ મોકલો તો લીમડાના પાંદડાનો બનાવીને મોકલજો.
તમારા શબ્દો માટે અમે ખૂબ આભારી છીએ. And now to be in conversation with our Godrej Literature Live Poet Laureate, I would like to invite one of India's most influential contemporary artists, trained both in Bombay and Paris, whose work blends personal memory, national history, and pop culture with masterful visual storytelling. His art travels across mediums and across the world, yet it always carries the heartbeat of the everyday. Please welcome Mr. Atul Dodiya. Let's revel in the joy of poetry and the ring of the rhyme rather than the chime of your ringtone. કૃપા કરીને તમારો ફોન એકદમ બંધ હોય કે સાયલેન્ટ પર હોય તે હું અપેક્ષા કરું છું. Now over to you, Mr. Dodiya, for the dialogue with our Godrej Literature Live Poet Laureate for 2025.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Mumbai Litfest, Amy and Kausar. I am also thinking and missing my friend Anil Dharkar. But it's a great honor to be here with Sitanshu Bhai. And Sitanshu Bhai, congratulations for this honor, this award. And well, I would like to say that somewhere in 1976, first time I saw Sitanshu Yashaschandra on Mumbai Doordarshan. It was a Gujarati Kavi Sammelan, and there were many poets were reading, and one of the poets was Sitanshu Bhai. And you see, when I have mentioned this earlier also, I will repeat it again, that first when I heard this name, I thought it's I was reminded of, like it's like probably some Jain Muni. And when I saw him, I almost thought, okay, this guy is Jain Sadhu, but poet, fine. So that's the way it started. And the poem which he read, it was so unusual, so different than anything which I had read, in Gujarati then. And I think I would rather read two small stanza from that poem. And the poem was, it was called a Gujarati poem for Ho Chi Minh. And it says that it starts like this, tank ni aage kuch, that means tank is moving forward. Tenth kahun kach dale tore, hrink taku tach hade tote, henk talu kak keda toche, henk tank kach dank tonk ha. Kale dato chat kalhun, tankat 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 tankat. Dato kale chat kalhun, tankat tankat, henk tonk dat kanch tank ha. Then there are two more stanzas. But this was the poem. And I said, yeah, I mean, as I said, the guy looks like a Jain Muni, but he writes a modern poetry, which is fantastic. So that's how. And then soon I got a collection of poetry, anthology, first anthology of Sitanshu Yashaschandra called Odysseus no Halesu, the Oar of Odysseus. And there were references of surrealism. I was familiar with surrealism painting. I had not yet joined Jesus School of Art, but was familiar with but later, because of him, little realized that it was a poet, André Breton and others, who wrote a manifesto of surrealism, actually. So that's how it started. And the Odysseus, this name also I was not familiar. I was not familiar with any Greek myth. But with him, reading him, lot of other mythology, a lot of other art, and a lot of other concepts which I thought I'm allowed to address in my own work as well. So Sitanshu Bhai, thank you again for your amazing poetry. I thought that I would ask you 4 questions.
Okay.
And I thought best that I write and ask you, so there is no confusion from my side. So in the first collection of poems, some of the poems were written when you were just 20 in Odysseus, Halesu.
That's right.
And the other anthologies came after that, mainly Jatayu, Vakhar, Warehouse, and Mahabhoj, a big feast. So from Greek to Hindu mythology, social and political themes, from humor and wit to the city, particularly the city of Mumbai, has a significant presence in your general oeuvre. So tell us about your early days in Mumbai, Grant Road, Bombay Central. Apart from Salman Rushdie's and Namdev Dhasal's Mumbai, I'm sure there is another Mumbai. Tell us about that. I'm talking about your poem, Pompai, Arthat Bombay. Pompai, of course, Bombay. That poem I'm thinking. But tell us about your early days in this city.
So as we know, 20 is a dangerous year to begin to write poetry. Because if you wrote the wrong kind of poetry when you are 20, then you continue to write the same poem when you are 85. So what happened when I was 20? I was not born in Bombay. I was born in Kutch, Bhuj, one kind of city. Then we went to Vadodara. At that time, we used to call it Baroda. We also used to call it Baroda. So there's another kind of city. So, but it came when in Vadodara, we used to fly kite. And if you cut someone's kite, then in a very Marathi way, we would shout, "Kati hai." Then I came to Bombay and still continued with kite fights. There I would, the same way, I was quite young, I would say, "Kati hai," and everybody would look at me in Girgam area in which we lived, because it was a Gujarati area. There you have to say, "Kai po che," in a very Surti way. Now this, where you reach is one thing, but the pathway that you take to reach it is very interesting. So this Mumbai was an unusual place for me, and following this talk in English language, in English language you have to speak in a particular way. So there are 3 M's. One is the multiple location within Mumbai that I experienced. See, Namdev, great poet. Salman Rushdie, greater or great, equally great, whatever. But to my mind, it seemed, as I go on reading them, that their location, their home in Mumbai is static. Namdev lives in one place in Mumbai. Rushdie lives in another place in Mumbai. And they hardly leave that place. Well, for a Gujarati coming from somewhere else, Mumbai is a very different kind of city. So we lived in a place called Sikanagar, which is near Tartar Samaj. And some of our richer friends who would come there, they would call it Stinkanagar, because it's a peculiar smell, But the smell was that of, in the summer, the mango stones And the more you throw, the better you look, you know. So it did stink, I mean, it's fragrance. So look, you know. And then a friend of mine his family was a mill worker family. So he lived in Lower Parel. And I would often go to Lower Parel. And then, of course, we also had people living in Malbar Hill. So we would go to Malbar Hill. So like that, Mumbai, for a person like me, is a place where you wander around, where you cross boundaries. Not Rushdie drawing a strong boundary in one area and Dasal drawing a strong boundary in another. This experience that Bombay gave me is multiple location. It reminded me of Rajput miniatures, where Krishna could be at 4 or 5 places in the same miniature. So this is something, you know, draw boundaries and cross them. And endless. That journey, the dynamism, so that was one. So multiple locations, mobility, and third, a kind of modernity. It's a peculiar modernity, Mumbai modernity of the 1950s, 60s. I find Calcutta is no class. I'm sorry, Bengali. Mumbai की जो modernity है ना, कलकत्ता पासे नहीं, मद्रास पासे नहीं, कोई नहीं पासे नहीं. Yeah, जबरदस्त है कि ચાલતું હતું અમે સેન્ટ ઝેવિયર્સ કોલેજમાં ભણતા હતા ને બપોરનો તાપ પડીને ત્રાસી જઈએ અને મેટ્રો સિનેમાથી પાસે જઈએ અને ત્યાં આગળ અમે એની અંદર ટિકિટ બારીની જે હતી તેની અંદરથી જઈએ કારણ કે ત્યાંથી એસીના આવતા. When Metro Cinema and Regal Cinema, they would show no Hindi cinema, only English cinema. તો આ જે બધું આખું હતું અંગ્રેજોનું મુંબઈ, મરાઠાઓનું મુંબઈ, ગુજરાતીઓનું મુંબઈ, કોનું નહીં, બધાની મુંબઈ. અને એટલા માટે એની મોડર્નિટી આ કલકત્તાવાળાની મોડર્નિટીથી જુદી આવી. કારણ કે એ લોકો તો બહુ વધારે પડતા કાં તો આત્માભિમાન બહુ હતું અને પછી નમનતાઈ પણ વધારે પડતી હતી. આ હંમેશા હોય છે કે બહુ અક્કડ હોય ને તે સૌથી વધારે ઝૂકી જાય તરત જ. મુંબઈની અંદર એક નમનતાઈ હતી, ગુજરાતી મુંબઈમાં, મરાઠી મુંબઈમાં. અને એટલે મારું એ મુંબઈ મને એ રીતે મલ્ટિપલ લોકેશન, મોબિલિટી અને આપણું પોતાની આપણી આધુનિકતા આપણા મધ્યકાળમાંથી આવે છે. અંગ્રેજોની આધુનિકતા અંગ્રેજીના મધ્યકાળમાંથી આવી હતી. તો આપણી આધુનિકતા અંગ્રેજોના મધ્યકાળમાંથી કેવી રીતે આવી શકે? એ લોકોની જુદી વસ્તુ હતી. એટલે આ 3 વસ્તુ મને મુંબઈમાંથી મળી. એટલે અને મરાઠી ભાષા માટેનો પ્રેમ એ મને વડોદરામાંથી પણ હતો અને મુંબઈમાં ચાલુ રહ્યો.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I understand about the multiplicity which you mentioned because it was Paris which gave me this multiplicity.
Yes.
You know, though I was born and brought up in Bombay, I say Bombay because I feel that, you know, see, it was Pulo Deshpande who said that for Parsi, Gujarati and Marathi, we always said Mumbai.
Yes.
You know, we never said Bombay or anything. Exactly. But when you impose and when you insist that, you know, no more Bombay, only Mumbai, then that's, I don't agree or approve. Anyway, that's another point. So, my second question. Okay, in Jatayu, there are poems about churning of the ocean, the vulture, Jatayu, Shabri, soliloquy of Hanuman, Prahlad's prayer. Your approach to ancient Indian myth in contemporary context is unique, particularly the use of Gujarati language from medieval to contemporary local Gujarati. Tell us something about this.
For all of us, Indians, especially in Western India, it's so difficult to figure things out. How much space we occupy, and even more difficult, how much time we occupy. What is the definition of the present time for us. એ બહુ અઘરું છે. See, there are some people, there's a very good Bengali friend of mine, and when we were writing these articles for Sheldon Pollock, which finally came out as Literary Cultures in South Asia, so he said that Bengali literature has two beginnings. One in medieval time and another in modern times. So this is what started with modern times. It was a new beginning. It's not. I never felt that. In fact, I really believe that Gujarati language did not begin at 13th century or 12th century, when Bharateshwar Bahubali Ghor and Bharateshwar Bahubali Ras were written in 1170, around 1170, because it is said, Gurjaranam Mukham Brashtam. That's what others said. And it is why? Apabhanshena tushyanti svena nanyena Gurjaraha. Gurjaras are happy with Apabhansha, which is their own, not the Apabhansha of somebody else. See, the problem with most of the contemporary Indian scholarship is that they don't know Indian languages. But they somehow, they have this theory and they are so smart. So they have no idea of what is Apabhansha. Really, when I started editing Encyclopedia of Indian Literature, of course, every committee, so there was Sanskrit committee and Bengali committee and Marathi committee, but there was no Prakrit and Apabhansh committee. Okay, so there was no Prakrit and Apabhansh, great literatures, Apabhansh literature from 6th century to 12th century, absolutely fabulous, great literature. And all Indian regions, Apabhansha literature was there. But it is said that Apabhanshena tushyanti svena nanyena Gurjaraha. Gurjara lokone to potano je Apabhansh જોઈએ છે, which goes to say that Gujarati language begins with its Apabhansha. Marathi didn't have Apabhansha. Marathi came straight from Prakrit. And Sindhi and Kutchi came from Vrachad. When you know this, only you have a right to write about Indian literature, speak about Indian literature, and so on. So we must assert ourselves now. Modern Indian writers should assert, but they must also work hard to know their origins. તો આ રીતે જ્યારે મને ખ્યાલ આવ્યો ત્યારે મને થયું કે આ સંસ્કૃતમાં બધું લખાયું હતું, આપણે બધું વાંચ્યું. તો એ પેલો અમારો બંગાળી લેખક, નામ હમણાં યાદ આવશે, બહુ મોટો માણસ છે, એ કહે કે આ તો 19મી સદીમાં બધું નવું શરૂ થયું. બંગાળી ન્યૂ બિગિનિંગ. અરે વોટ ન્યૂ બિગિનિંગ? એટલે મને થયું કે આપણે સંસ્કૃતને ભૂતકાળની ભાષા અને સંસ્કૃત સાહિત્યને ભૂતકાળનું સાહિત્ય ન કરી નાખીએ. But the moment which is our present moment should expand so much, and that it should include many centuries. That is a challenge of a writer, to turn our present moment into century-long present moment. Why not? Everything is present, everything is now. And કેમ ના થઈ શકે? And that's how Gujarati language should come to us. Multiple layers of Gujarati language itself. And those layers should go on, and they should ultimately include Sanskrit, because after all, look at the name Sanskrit. It's not a regional language. It's a refined language. So Sanskrit is not language of any part. It's everywhere. The moment you refine your language, it becomes Sanskrit. The moment you bring out its inner strength, it becomes Prakrit. And the moment, like Picasso doing his paintings, you distort it, or some of your great paintings. Absolutely. When you distort it, from your shutters, and so rolling up and so, then it becomes Apabhansha. So like that, if we can imagine our Gujarati language as Gujarati Sanskrit, Gujarati Prakrit, and Gujarati Apapransh. Then, લક્કડ બજારમાં લાગી આગ ને બગલા ઉડ્યા 22, રામે શબરીને કેવડાવ્યું, હવે અવાયું તો આવીશ. If I, so no certainty, and no certainty that he will not come. Because for Beckett, Godrej is never going to come. For metaphysical poets whom Eliot liked, God is always going to be there. For Indians, we have a great ability, whatever religion, this acceptance of uncertainty. A great strength. It requires acceptance of uncertainty. Rame Shabri ne kavadayu, avayu to avish. So he is not telling you, I will not come. He will not say, I will definitely come. So then you become active rather than shift activism to some other place. And that is why, where Atul, I differ from literature of commitment. Because they think that unless you say and do some things, you are not a good writer. They have to have they have their formula of acting. They also, in fact, they don't actually do it. They live very comfortably in very nice houses, and but they say, what about the Dalits? What about the laborers? Then, like Gandhians, go and live with them. No, they. So exploiting someone else's problems, it doesn't become us. And I suspect that several of these writers of the commitment and so on, and this platform is also open for them. In fact, it was more open for them. And inviting a person like me, you are also slightly shifting. So I'm very happy that this is also a dynamic organization. So in short, I went back, I didn't go back to the Indian myths. I went forward to the Indian myths.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, when you say this about the commitment, it goes well with my third question, which is, say, from Vakhar to Mahabhoj. There are many somersaults in terms of theme and language in your work. From warehouse to milk.
Yes.
Yusuf Meher Ali to Ibrahim Rugova to Bamyan Buddha. In all these poems, disturbing political situation is emphasized. What do you feel about the current disturbing state of affairs, not just in India, but everywhere?
Selective unhappiness is a sign of intellectual dishonesty. I'm very unhappy. I don't like this. Gujarat Vidyapith always never had the governor of the state as its chancellor. Why? Gandhiji's thing. So I'm very unhappy. But most of my contemporary writers are so selectively unhappy. What happened in Bangladesh, they would never say. Bangladesh is our neighbor. Things happen to us. Now this Imran Khan and this general are at each other's throat in Pakistan. Why don't you talk about it? So if India has a few problems, these problems don't come always from within India, but in our lives. Problems come from the context also. And if you are so intelligent, if you know so many theories and so on, Jacques Lacan and all that. So Yeah, you have shown your intellectual brilliance by showing modernity, postmodernity, structuralism, post-structuralism, this and that. So that's very fun, but if you are so intelligent, why don't you talk about what is happening in Nepal, what is happening in China, what is happening in Sri Lanka? We had a very good, I really appreciate the panel that you had formed this morning. This is the kind of honesty that is there. You brought in Sri Lanka. We must bring it because we do not live in isolation. That is why I started writing about these political situations in a particular way. And that particular way is, for example, sound poems like Ho Chi Minh. Later on, I wrote on Ibrahim Rugova also,
Yeah.
much later. That Excuse Me poem on the Muslim Gandhian leader.
Meher Ali.
Meher Ali, Yusuf Meher Ali.
Yusuf Meher Ali.
So you select your themes in such a way that your statement doesn't become a handmaid of this or that ideology. Someone asks a question, how does a fascist become a ruler? But you must ask two questions. How does a fascist become a ruler? And how does a communist become a ruler? Because each one, Hitler was bad, and Soviet Union could stay together. I mean, just imagine such a great experiment of mankind that let everyone will be. Marx was a great thinker, but what happened? So why not ask? We are Indians. We are not, in an old civilization. And coming back,
Okay.
that if we can learn to expand our present time into centuries or millennia and really live those things, live those contradictions, know how we have resolved those contradictions over centuries, so many problems, so many. तो वैसे कुछ बात है कि हंसती मिट्टी है, कुछ बात कुछ नहीं है. कुछ बात है ना क्या? कुछ बात है कि हंसती मिट्टी वो सारू छ हंसती मिट्टी नहीं है हमारे से पण क्या बात है वो तो कहो. If you are a poet, you have to say क्या बात है, क्या क्या बातें हैं. And then it's so difficult to bear that. It's so painful. Then you introspect. And then you say that I'm a Indian Hindu, Indian Muslim, Indian Christian, Indian, huh? So how difficult it is. How to become an Indian Muslim. How to become an Indian Hindu. Indian not in a nationalistic sense, but in a particular way of dealing with others. A particular way of dealing with others. Even now the joint families don't go away from India. Even now, 21st century. But joint family is there. Somehow people meet. They might not meet in the ancestral home. They might in Mathiran or somewhere else. But they somehow come together and so on. તો આ બધું છે તે બધું આપણે ટકાવી રાખવું હોય તો પોલિટિકલ પોઈમ્સ પોલિટિકલ નોવેલ્સ પણ લખવી પડે but not dictated either by right or by left.
Okay. We have a little time, but I have one question which, in a poem, Tagar Tagar,
Yes.
which is one of my favorite poems of yours. Tagar Tagar means to look intently. I am not saying this is one of my favorites because I'm a painter, but the concern which this poem raises or generates, that is something which I like very much. You are talking about running away from the realm of the language in this poem. Trying to touch the things the way they are without naming them. Is it a poetic device, or you really mean distancing self from the language? So that is one part of the question. At the same time, in your most recent 45 pages long poem, which I consider as one of the most iconic poems in Gujarati, and for that matter in any Indian language, called Rainforest of Costa Rica. It's an amazing, amazing poem, no doubt. We see your love and passion for physical world, landscape, soil, water, along with the family, children and grandchildren, pura vida, pure life, is expressed beautifully in language. So is there a contradiction between Tagar Tagar and Rainforest of Costa Rica?
Only Atul could ask this question. See, language to me is like a woman, my own woman. Now, if you're really honest, you know that if you love the woman very intensely, at times you want to go away from her. Brother, sister, everything in love is different. But your own woman or your man, I think same thing, same feelings. Then there is kind of attraction, repulsion, which is unusual. My wife is sitting here and she's going to scold me. But I tell you that at times you feel like going away. So same thing with language. Because if you are using language to connect yourself with huge spaces, just as you do in your paintings, huge spaces, not physically, but inside, and huge times, then at times it is very taxing. At times you want to go away from it. So there was a phase in which I said, what is this? So many languages, so many words, so many languages, and I write long poems and so on. So I said, let me go back to things themselves, without name. And really, it's such a great experience. Just as if you take a nice vacation, not with somebody else, but alone. And then you go home. If you're traveling and you go home, that first few days are so good, no? If you're traveling for, like that, moving away from language and moving towards things. And I like Nietzsche. Our time is up.
Time is almost, yeah.
So Nietzsche has this, that when Apollo finally speaks the language of Dionysus, great art is born. When Apollo speaks his own language, it becomes classical. Okay. When Dionysus goes on speaking his own language, it is romantic. But when Apollo finally speaks the language of Dionysus, not the other way around, but Apollo, who is a master of structure, that has to be there. But those structures should be blasted, and just as in your paintings, great structures, and then you blast them from inside. That should happen in literature, in language. So, and it will be so liberating, because then no ideology would control you, because from inside you will blast it. Marxism or Gandhism, whatever, no ism. Surrealism is a different kind of thing, because it is exploration. So I'm most grateful to you, most grateful to Atul for this.
Well, yeah, we have some time for question and answers. So if you have any question, observation, doubt, whatever, you can ask Sitanshu bhai.
જરા ઇન્ટરપ્રેટ કરી આપ.
Oh, she would like to know about this, the rainforest of Costa Rica
Okay, okay.
poem. If you could read some lines or
So,
read a few lines.
very briefly, it's a Raso poem. Now, Raso is an old Jain and non-Jain literary form. It's a particular kind of travelogue, but not Western kind of travelogue. Then lots of imagination come in. In Western, you have to describe things exactly as they are. But as Wallace Stevens, my favorite poet, says, things exactly as they are changed upon the blue guitar. So Raso changes travelogue in a particular way. And it permits you to be at both levels. Realistic, you're traveling, small details, and then suddenly something else. So this building of structure and blowing it up seems to be my favorite thing to do. And Costa Rica, માં ઘણા બધા છે ને તે themes છે. એમાં છેલ્લે તો ઋગ્વેદમાંથી જે અરણ્યની સ્તોત્ર છે તે આવે છે એમાં કે આ અરણ્યનું તમે શું કરી નાખો છો. બહુ સરસ સ્તોત્ર છે, તમે વાંચજો એ. બીજું કે આ માઇગ્રેશનનું બધું છે કે અમે લોકો સરસ રીતે બધા પ્લેનમાં બેસીને કોસ્ટારિકા જઈએ અને ત્યાંથી સાઉથ અમેરિકાનું બધા આમ ખલાસ કરી નાખે છે માણસ જાતને ત્યાં એ લોકોએ એક રાજ્યમાં એક દેશમાં. ત્યાંથી બિચારા બધા અમેરિકા જવા માગે અને તારા પહેલાં સાહેબ કહે છે કે ના આવતા અહીંયા, અમારે ત્યાં ના આવતા. પણ આ શું છે? કોસ્ટારિકા અહીંયા જવાનું, ત્યાંના લોકો અને એ એક જગ્યાએ ભેગા મળે છે. એ પાછો કયું છે?
San Jose.
સાન હોઝે તો ખરું, પણ બીજું એક દેશ છે જેમાં કેપિટલનું નામ પણ
San Salvador.
ભાઈ આ પરમ ઉદ્ધારક આપણે બબે વખત કરવાનો અહીંયા ઉદ્ધાર કરવાનો. પણ આ બધું વાંચજો, મને એકદમ યાદ નથી આવતું. પણ લાંબી કવિતા છે ને મજા આવે છે. મલ્ટિપલ લેયર્સ છે અને બેઝિકલી ધ સેમ. I sort of discovered with your help that I like building major structures and then disrupting those major structures, building more major structures. Thank you.
Thank you.
તે એકદમ ભાવપૂર્ણ વાતચીત માટે તમારા બેઉનો ખૂબ આભાર. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our Poet Laureate will be available to sign his books at the Sunken Garden. Yes, one last question. Okay, but it has to be a very quick question.
Yes, good evening. I'm from Brazil and I just arrived in India and I'm a poetess as well and I'm a traveler as well and I'm so impressed. So many people to attending an event about poetry and I just came from Serbia where maybe 10 people would attend an event like this. And well, it's a blooming field of flowers and I would like to congratulate you and ask you, since you wrote about Costa Rica, China and Sri Lanka and about even, well, all those distant countries, Pristina, what would you write about Brazil? Would you like to write about a country? You said you are an ancient civilization and that doesn't make sense to talk about left and right or isms. In Brazil, we are a recent civilization and still we think so similarly. So I would like to listen to your opinion about Brazil and what you find poetical in my country.
અતુલ, ખાસ કે સવાલ નહોતો ને?
Nah. Thank you.
She's saying, say a few words about Brazil.
Sorry?
About Brazil.
She wants to say a few words about Brazil.
About?
Brazil.
The country.
Country.
She's from Brazil.
Brazil.
Brazil? Why Brazil?
She's from Brazil.
Really, I wasn't slightly. Why Brazil?
She's from Brazil. She's
from
a
Brazil.
visitor who's come from Brazil.
Okay, now, yeah, I get you. I'm sorry. First of all, I'm very hard of hearing, so there's, okay. But એટલે શું છે કે બ્રાઝિલ what happened when Europe went to America, what happened when Europe went to Africa, and what happened when Europe went to Asia. These are three issues to which, if someone has the capacity, we must inquire. Because unusual, I mean, that's what happened in last 400 years. And change. So Brazil is, what happened to North America and Southern American continent are again two different things. In North America, everyone was बिल्कुल सफाया कर दिया, सबको मार डाला. But in southern continent, Incas were there, Mayas were there, they were great civilizations. So they were not able to kill off all of them. But in some places, the mixture was so unstable that newer hybrid civilizations didn't come up. I'm not against hybrid. In fact, I'm very much for hybridity. When mankind meets and somehow something new comes up, very good. But that's not what happened in most. But Brazil is an exception. Now, I think Argentina, where Hitler's generals took shelter. कयो देश है? Argentina. So Brazil is different. So right now, India and Brazil and some other countries are forming alliance, which is very good. So I do not, I mean, Brazil somehow is probably a very large country. So when small people try to rule a population, they produce small countries physically. Because larger the country, except China, very difficult to control. So મને Brazil માટે એક જાતનો affection for it, because it is an exception to the rule of a terrible mess that has been created by Europe of conquistador, conquest and this and that and so on. So Brazil is, and it's no wonder that Brazil and India are this BRICS and so on is coming up.